Okay, so we're back with hour 2. Now, Raj had an interesting question. He tried putting in 30. I was putting in numbers that neatly divided into 100 evenly. But what happens when we try a number like 30 or 40 to itself? We don't get, it doesn't end evenly at 100. So if I try 30, we get this. 30, 60, 90, and 120. So how's this possible? Why do we have 120 even though we told our code only run our loop so long as our running total is less than 100? Wilson?
If it's 99 and you're adding 112, it's still going to go past. Doesn't matter what the number is.
Right, and we can actually see it. So the first time around our number's 30 and our total 0, which is less than 100. So let's go ahead and run our statement, which prints out 30. We've added 30 to it. So our second time we're at 60. So our current total is still less than 30. We add another 30. Now we're at 60. We add 30 again. We're still less than 100. But it prints out 90. So now we're adding another 30 on, but right now our running total is still 90. So our command executes one more time to add another 30. Max, did you have something you want to say?
Could you put a if statement to try to make it so that if it goes over 100 to remove?
Yep, that would work.
File variable.
We wouldn't need to remove it, but we could check before we do an output. Before we add it to the output, we could check if the running total is still under 100 or not. And if it's less than, if it's greater than 100, we could just skip that step. Yep, that would work.
Or you could do running total plus user number is less than or equal to 100.
Sorry, here, running total is equal to?
No, running total plus user number is less than or equal to 100.
Yep. Right, so as long as the next one, once we added it, we didn't, you mean here?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that would work too. That would prevent us from showing numbers over 100.
And we put I less than 100.
Yep, that would work as well. Okay, so there's a number of different ways we could do it. We could prevent that. That would work too. Yep. Okay, let's try some other examples together. So let's go back to our form. Let's try simulating, because it's something we're going to have to do on a web application. Let's try adding, we talked about in my for loop example. Let's actually do this one. Rather than putting on a text box, we're going to create a drop-down list. And what we want to do is fill that drop-down list from 2016 to 2026. Now, we could code in all of those options into our list, but it would be easier to just use a loop to do it. So we've used text boxes and buttons. Let's go back to our toolbox. I'll put on another label down here. I'll just make my form nice and big so we can do a bunch of examples. So I'll call my label expiry year because we might expect to see that. And instead of using a text box, we want this control called a combo box. A combo box is a drop-down list. So I'm going to drag one of these on. So I'm going to call my combo box call it CBO year. So there's two ways we can put values, we could put options into this. In the property sheet, I could scroll down to here where it says items, and if I click that little button, it allows me to just type in on separate lines each of the items that would appear in the list. That's one way of doing it. But the problem is we don't want our year to be hard-coded in here, right? Because if we put in from the numbers from 2016 to 2026, well, 2016 is almost over. We don't want to have to go back on January 1st and change our code to make it go from 2017 to 2027. So we can use a loop so that dynamically we can always start at the current year and then add box on. If I run my form right now, our combo box is going to be empty. We have this drop-down list with no choices in it. So we'll go back to our code. Actually, when I run it. So when should we have the choices filled into this menu?
10 years after.
Yeah, we'll want 10 years, but when should the choices get added? We're going to use a loop to add 10 different years. Wilson?
Is it possible to do it when you click the arrow?
We could do it when it's clicked. The other option would be just load the choices as soon as our form loads. So as soon as our page runs, our form runs, we want to fill this list. So we can actually do that right here in this method that just is public form 1. Anything we want to happen as soon as our form loads, run it here. So we'll want to fill the year on list when the form loads. So we'll variable called year. Where should we start? What number do we want to start our loop at? We'll start at 2016. When do we want to keep? We want to keep going so long as year is what value? Like when do we want to stop? We want the next 10 years. So we'll keep our loop going so long as our year is less than 2027. And each time we go around, how many years should we add? Yeah, we'll just add 1. So year plus plus means add 1 to the current year. So go from 2016 to 2017, 2017, 2018, etc. We could write this out as, this would be equivalent, year equals year plus 1. We'll take the current year and add 1. Year plus plus means the same as this. Keep the current value and add 1 more onto it, which is a little bit shorter to type. So I'll change that back to year plus plus. So go from 2016 to 2026, adding 1 each time. But now we want to take this value and we want to add it to our drop-down list. We want to add current year to the drop-down. So my year drop-down has a property called items. And in here, it has a method called add. The add method wants to know, so it wants an object that represents the item to add to the collection. So we'll try it like this. So what do we want to add? We want to add the current year to our menu. We'll try this and see what happens. So we run our form. And now we have all of the years automatically added. So rather than us having to type them out, we'll use a loop to fill our list. So instead of having to type out 11 values, we've written 3 lines of code that will automatically generate the 11 years for us. Now this summer we had the Summer Olympics in Brazil, right? How often do the Olympics run? Every 4 years, okay? So how would we change this code if instead of showing every year, we wanted to show the years of the next 10 Summer Olympic Games?
You have to go +4, and
If we could try that. If we did year,
I'll have to change the greater than, so what is?
so if we did year equals year plus 4, so add each time we display a year, don't show the next year, show 4 years later, because the Olympics are only every 4 years.
Then we also have to change the greater than to.
Right, we would need to change where it ends as well. Right, we would need to add 40 years onto that to make that work. So that would be if we wanted to increment, for example, to show the Olympic years of every 4. I'll just leave it at this. Well, if we were showing, yes, if we were showing both Winter and Summer Olympics, we would increment by 2. If we're showing only the summer or only the winter, we'd increment by 4. One more little trick. Right now, our list will always go from 2016 to 2026, which for the next 3 months is fine. But as soon as the calendar turns to January, we want our list should change. We don't want to start at 2026 anymore. Right? Sorry, at 2016, because 2016 is over. We don't want users to pick 2016. So how could we change this so instead of always starting at 2016 and going to 2026, we could make that dynamic. Whatever the current year is, we want to start there and then add 10 years. Sorry, Daniel? Yeah, Visual Studio does have a function. C# has a function to automatically give us the current year. Anybody have any idea what that function would be, how we would find it, or has anybody used it? Well, let's comment this out and see. Instead of hard coding it as 2016, if we use system date time it doesn't have get year, but it has now. That year. That's the current year.
And the other one +10. So see.
So now we have to say, when would we stop?
Year +10. Always. Really?
So we can't do it that way.
Do we have to convert the system dot time to an integer?
No, it knows it's an integer. Sorry? Well, so how would you change it? What could we do? Sorry? Sorry, year? Year plus 10? Very good. So keep looping so long as the year is less than 10. We'll try that and see. Where did our form go? My form never showed up. We created a, Daniel, you said it. It's an infinite loop. Our loop never actually ends. This condition never is true. And eventually we get a memory error. Can't handle what we're doing. So a good try. Any other suggestions how we fix that? Okay. We could do that. So we could do that. You could try that. Oh, right. Let's see if that gives us an infinite loop. Okay, so that would work. So figure out the current year, figure out where we're ending, and then display those in a list. We don't have to figure it out this way. There's nothing wrong with just hard coding it for now. I'll comment those two out and I'll put this one back where we're hard coding the values. Okay, here's one for you to try. Add a second drop-down list, and I want you to use a loop for the months to show the months from 1 to 12, like you would on a credit card expiry, right? Usually we have two drop-downs, a month expiry and a year expiry. So we've got the years. I want you to put an expiry month with a drop-down that loops from 1 to 12 on your form. Put another label and drop down on. And just before or just after we fill the year drop down, we want to fill the month drop down as well, with the values 1 to 12. Anybody have their month box working? People? Give you a couple more minutes to try it. Hey, DJ, can I ask you how you did it?
I did basically have the same courtesy year, just here I placed the year with month equal to 1, and then month not be, or is greater than or equal to 12,
Greater than?
or I less than.
Right, so we want it to be less than 12, less than or equal to 12. Yep.
Always so, and then month plus plus.
Yeah, and then we'll just increment 1 month at a time. Okay, so what happened inside our loop?
And then I did CDO month dot items dot add bracket month.
So we'll just add each month to our list. So this should go around a dozen times, each time adding 1. So now we've got from 1 to 12. Great. So this looks like what we would expect to see if we were building a checkout page and asking someone for their credit card. So the exact same structure, just with different starting points and different stopping points. What are we doing for time? Okay. Any questions about these about our month loop? Okay, we're going to try one other loop. We'll try a while loop. So maybe what we'll do, we'll go back to our form. And I'll just add one more label on. Line it up here. I'll take the text off of it. And we'll use a while loop to print, as I said, maybe the next bunch of Summer Olympic years. So I'll call this one LBL Olympics. So my label's blank. We could use a for loop. But we're going to look at trying to use a while loop instead. So we'll go back to our C# code. We want to programmatically calculate what when the next 5 Summer Olympic Games will be. So we'll start this year. We'll create a variable called Olympic year that starts at 2016. While our Olympic year is less than or equal to, well, we'll add as long as our year is less than 2036, we'll want to add that year to our label. We'll convert it to a string. We'll print it on our label. Now, if I run this code right now, our form's never going to load. We've got an infinite loop, right? Because we start at 2016, we check, are we less than 2036? Yes. It prints that message. What happens next? Comes back around, what's the value of Olympic year? Yeah, we have to increment it. So add 4 to the year after printing. Instead of plus plus, we say plus equals 4. So go from 2016 to 2020, 2020 to 2024, etc. So we could use a for loop. But in this case, we're going to try the while loop so we can see what it looks like and how it works. So as long as this condition is true, we're going to run the commands inside. As soon as this condition is false, we stop. We don't do these things anymore. Our code ends. So there we've got the next five starting this year. Just stop and restart it. We can see what happens. So our first time around, we're at 2016, which is less than 2036. So our code's going to go in here. Display the year. And then we add 4. So now our year is 2020. And our code will just keep going around so long as this value is less than this one. When we're 2028, it will execute. 2032, it executes. 2036, we said less than or equal to, so our code will go in here one more time. Now our value is 2040, and now when we do this comparison, is our year less than or equal to 2036? Our condition is now false, so we stop doing this. In effect, our servers run out of drinks on the tray, or our checkout cashier at the grocery store has run out of items to scan. There's nothing more. So that cyclical process comes to an end. And there we get our result. Does anybody have any questions so far about any of the stuff we're doing here? Okay, I will leave this code up here. We'll take a break, and when we come back, what I'm going to do is kind of mix the room up a little bit and give you some, not for marks, but some chance to practice using loops on your own. Okay, and then I'll give you your lab at the end of class. Let's take a break here for 10 minutes. We'll come back at 10 o'clock.